Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast, where today's deep dive is going to get into something that, well, I think pretty much everyone listening has either experienced or, inevitably will experience at some point.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those universal human realities.
Right. So I want you to just picture this for a second. Imagine staring at a buffering video screen, and it's like 3 in the morning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that late night isolation.
Exactly. You are sitting completely alone in your kitchen. You've got sweatpants on. The house is just dead silent, except for, I don't know, maybe the hum of your refrigerator.
Right, that really specific, heavy, kind of quiet.
Yeah. And you're drinking cold coffee out of this mug. And meanwhile, like 4,000 miles away through that little glowing rectangle on your table, your family is putting your mother to rest.
It's just a profoundly painful image.
It really is. I mean, you can see the heavy oak of the pews on the screen. You can see the flowers. You can literally see your brother's shoulders shaking in the front row.
But you can't be there. You can't put a hand on his shoulder.
Exactly. You cannot touch him. You can't smell the incense or the damp earth or any of that. You can't even add your own voice to the hymn they're singing.
You're completely cut off from the sensory experience.
Yes. But you're also, well, you're exiled. You are geographically locked out of this incredibly primal human ritual, right? That collective gathering of the mourning village.
That image, I mean, it perfectly captures the absolute double loss of distance mourning. It's not just one loss, it's two.
Right. Wait, what do you mean by double loss?
Well, obviously, you're mourning the physical loss of the person who died. That's the primary grief. But then you are simultaneously mourning your forced exclusion from the communal goodbye.
Oh, man. Yeah, you're mourning the fact that you can't mourn with everyone else.
Exactly. And historically, I mean, that was simply a tragedy of circumstance that you just had to swallow. There was no alternative.
Because travel used to be impossible for most people, right?
Completely. For centuries, if you didn't have the immense wealth required for a multi-week carriage ride, or maybe the physical stamina for a huge transatlantic voyage, your absence was absolute.
Wow. Yeah, you just weren't there. End of story.
Right. The ritual happened, the earth was moved, and you got a letter about it like 3 months later. Physical proximity was literally the only ticket into the ritual.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dives today. Because sitting in that kitchen at 3 a.m., well, it actually doesn't have to be an experience of total isolation anymore.
It really doesn't. And that's what's so fascinating about the resources we're looking at today.
Right. We are digging into a super practical but also deeply psychological guide on how to fundamentally change the architecture of a funeral.
To include the people who can't physically be in the room.
Exactly. We're pulling from this incredibly detailed source material provided by the funeral program site. And I have to say, their insights go way beyond just like telling you which webcam to buy on Amazon.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a tech manual.
No, not at all. They are offering this whole philosophy on how modern, everyday tools can actually be repurposed to bridge that awful gap between geographic exile and true emotional inclusion.
And the foundational thesis of their text is actually quite radical when you think about it. I mean, when you apply it to such an ancient tradition.
Radical how? Like, what's the core premise there?
The premise is that distance might prevent physical presence, sure, but it absolutely does not dictate emotional absence.
Oh, I love that. Distance doesn't equal absence.
Right. The traditional hyper-localized concept of what makes a funeral is actively evolving right now.
Yeah, it has to, right? The world is too spread out now.
Exactly. The source material is really trying to equip families with the understanding that bringing a remote mourner into the fold isn't about, achieving this high-end, perfect television broadcast.
Right. You don't need a CNN production crew in the chapel.
No, not at all. It is entirely about manufacturing intentional connection. It's about proving to that person sitting in that quiet kitchen that they are still a vital part of the village.
Okay, let's pause on that idea of the village for a second. Or, like, the network of support. Because the parameters of that network have fundamentally changed, haven't they?
Oh, massively. Completely shifted.
I mean, think about 100 years ago. The network of mourners was strictly defined by the people who lived within, what, maybe a 50-mile radius?
Yeah, and whoever could physically fit inside the 4 walls of the local chapel, that was your village.
Right. If you lived further away, you were just off the grid. But today, the source materials suggest that modern mourning actually requires us to deliberately engineer A new kind of support network.
Yes, a network that uses these digital tethers to pull that isolated mourner right back into the center of the communal experience.
Which is beautiful, but I imagine it requires a mindset shift, right? Because people can be pretty stubborn about tradition.
That is the biggest hurdle. We really have to dismantle this lingering societal assumption that remote attendance is somehow a secondary or lesser way of participating.
Or even disrespectful.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know some people feel like if you don't show up, you don't care.
Exactly. For a long time, there is a massive stigma attached to it. The text argues we have to stop viewing remote access as a sort of consolation prize for the absentee.
Like, oh, well, I guess you can just watch on your phone.
Right, it shouldn't be an afterthought. It needs to be viewed alongside the physical gathering as a primary active extension of the mourning community. The walls of the building are no longer the boundary of the ritual.
Okay, so technology obviously provides the immediate solution to the visual barrier, right?
Yeah.
Like the foundation of this expanded network, according to the guide, is the live stream.
Yes, the live stream is the absolute baseline.
But okay, let me push back on this premise just a little bit before we get into the nuts and bolts of the mechanics.
Sure, go for it.
Because if we normalize the live stream, if we make it incredibly easy to just, like, click a YouTube link from the comfort of your living room couch,
Right.
don't we risk cheapening the sacrifice of the ritual?
That's a very common concern.
Right. I mean, showing up to a funeral is supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
You buy this terribly expensive last-minute flight, you sleep on a horrible hotel mattress.
You deal with the rental cars and the awful airport food.
Exactly. You subject yourself to the physical discomfort of travel to demonstrate the weight of your love for the person who passed. So if we remove all that friction, doesn't the convenience sort of degrade the profound nature of showing up?
I get why you'd think that. But that argument assumes the person clicking the link is choosing convenience over presence.
Oh, meaning they would be there if they could.
Yes, exactly. The text specifically targets the realities of modern constraints. The people utilizing these streams are not choosing their couch over a chapel because they just want an easy out.
Right, they aren't just skipping it to watch Netflix later.
No. We are talking about, say, an elderly aunt who physically cannot board an airplane without risking a major cardiac event.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or we're talking about a young family living paycheck to paycheck who simply cannot absorb a sudden $2,000 emergency travel expense.
Man, when you put it like that,
Or immunocompromised individuals, or military personnel who are literally deployed overseas. To suggest that their lack of physical struggle somehow diminishes their grief is, well, it's a massive failure of empathy.
okay, yeah, that completely reframes it for me. It's not a luxury, it's a lifeline.
Exactly. The live stream doesn't cheapen the ritual, it democratizes it. It completely separates the requirement of wealth and physical health from the basic human right to say goodbye.
That is such a powerful distinction. It really is an accessibility ramp for the grieving.
That's a perfect way to phrase it, an accessibility ramp.
But even acknowledging that, right, I have to imagine that introducing cameras into a room that is already so heavy with sorrow, it has to trigger a massive wave of tech intimidation for the organizers.
Oh, absolutely. Families are terrified of doing it wrong.
I mean, there's a fear of turning this sacred, incredibly vulnerable human moment into some sort of weird public spectacle.
Yes, they worry it's going to feel like a reality TV show or something.
Right. But the source material advocates for a setup that is so simple, it almost sounds, I don't know, inadequate. They basically say just use a smartphone, a basic tripod, and a stable internet connection.
I know, it sounds too simple to work. But that perceived inadequacy is actually its greatest strength.
Really? How so?
Well, the text is very careful to strip away all the intimidating language of broadcasting. You do not need multiple camera angles, you don't need professional lighting rigs, or a complex soundboard.
Which is a release because nobody grieving has the mental bandwidth to figure out a soundboard.
Exactly. You just use the platforms people already navigate every single day. A private YouTube link, a Zoom room, secure Vimeo stream.
So the barrier to entry is intentionally kept really low.
Yes, so that a grieving family whose cognitive load is already completely maxed out by trauma and logistics doesn't just abandon the whole idea out of technical overwhelm.
But still, even with just a phone, the physical presence of a camera in a chapel feels inherently clinical to me. Like, respectful intimacy and smartphone clamped to a tripod are two concepts that really clash in my mind.
It's a jarring juxtaposition, for sure.
Doesn't the lens disrupt the sanctity of the room for the people who actually did make the physical journey? Like, are they going to be staring at the phone the whole time?
This is exactly where the source material's main mantra becomes so essential. Their mantra is, the goal is not perfection, but connection.
Not perfection, but connection. I like that.
Right. When the family and the organizers finally let go of the burden of producing a flawless television show, that clinical atmosphere just dissipates.
Because it's not a production anymore.
Exactly. A smartphone on a tripod placed discreetly in the back row. It doesn't move. It doesn't pan around. It doesn't zoom in on people's tears, which would be awful.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that would be terrible.
It simply acts as an unblinking, silent witness. It holds a static frame over the altar or the podium. And, honestly, the people in the room forget it is even there within about 5 minutes.
That makes sense. Once the service starts, your focus is on the speaker, not the tripod in the back.
Right. But for the person 4,000 miles away, that static, unblinking witness is their only absolute lifeline to the reality of the event.
So the directive for anyone listening who might be tasked with organizing this someday is to just radically lower their production standards.
Yes. Embrace the raw authenticity.
Like, if the lighting from the stained glass window blows out the exposure on the phone camera a little bit, just let it happen.
Let it happen. It's fine.
Or if there's a slight echo because you're relying on the phone's internal microphone rather than some fancy lapel mic,
Right.
you just accept the echo.
Exactly. By stripping away all that anxiety of a flawless presentation, you reserve all your limited energy for the actual purpose, which is just opening that digital window.
Because, I guess, the remote viewer isn't sitting there critiquing the cinematography anyway, right?
Of course not. They are desperate for proximity. They are listening for the cadence of the officiant's voice. They are watching the collective sway of the congregation during a song.
They just want to feel like they're in the room.
And honestly, the rawness of a single static shot often feels way more authentic to them than a heavily produced multi-camera feed that artificially cuts between faces.
Oh, that makes total sense. Like, a produced feed feels like a movie. A static shot feels like you're sitting in a pew.
Exactly. The static shot allows them to psychologically project themselves right into the back row of that room.
Wow. Okay, but opening that visual window creates a secondary problem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Technology solves the visual barrier, sure, but it sort of inadvertently creates a participation barrier.
How do you mean?
Well, think about the physical act of watching a screen. Whether it's a really good prestige drama on TV or a live sports game, screens naturally render us passive.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. Yes.
We sit back, we observe, we eat snacks. If you are watching a funeral through a monitor, that natural sensory feedback loop is broken. You are effectively reduced to a spectator watching a really sad documentary of your own family's worst day.
That is a very real danger, yes. The passivity of the screen.
So how does the text suggest we pull the remote mourner out of that passivity? How do we make them active?
The source material addresses this brilliantly through the deliberate sharing of physical or digital artifacts ahead of the service.
Artifacts, like what?
They strongly advise sending the order of service, digital funeral programs, prayer cards, and specific readings to the remote attendees well before the event actually begins.
Oh, interesting. So they have the actual materials in their hands.
Exactly, whether they print them out or just have them open on a tablet.
Okay, let me introduce a mechanism to explain why I think that matters so much. Think of traditional in-person grief like a localized power grid.
A power grid. I like this.
Right, so everyone sitting in the pews is drawing from and giving back to the exact same emotional energy source. You hear someone weep softly behind you, and you feel this collective shift in the room.
Yes, the shared emotional resonance.
You stand up together for a hymn. You sit down together for a reading. Being remote is like trying to run on battery power. Your emotional reserves drain incredibly fast because you are entirely disconnected from that collective grid.
You're just absorbing the sadness without any of the communal buffering.
Yes. You are processing massive sorrow entirely without external communal support. To me, sending that digital program ahead of time acts as like a long extension cord, plugging that remote person right back into the chapel's grid.
That is an exceptionally good way to visualize the sociology of collective mourning. There's actually a term for this.
Oh, really? What is it?
Emile Durkheim, the pioneering sociologist, he wrote about something called collective effervescence.
Collective effervescence.
That sounds intense. It is. It's that overwhelming feeling of energy and harmony when people are engaged in a shared ritual. We usually assume that strictly requires physical proximity.
Because you have to be in the crowd to feel the crowd, right?
Right. But the text suggests we can actually hack that sociological need through synchronized action. A PDF of the funeral program isn't just an informational document, it's a script for synchronization.
Oh, man. When you hold that document, your physiological response literally changes.
Absolutely, it does.
You aren't just watching people stand up on a screen like you're watching actors in a play. You see the cue in your own program. You know the hymn is coming. You can choose to stand up in your own living room.
Yes, you are physically participating.
You are reading the exact same ancient text, syllable for syllable, at the exact same millisecond as your brother, who is standing at the podium 4,000 miles away.
And in that moment, the physical distance might remain, but the cognitive and emotional distance collapses into absolute alignment.
The choreography of the ritual is totally restored.
Precisely. For that hour, your mind is entirely tethered to the sequence happening in the room. The isolation is temporarily suspended because your actions are perfectly mirrored by the collective.
And the craziest part is, the logistical effort required to achieve this profound psychological shift is almost zero.
It's remarkably simple.
It literally just requires someone to remember to attach a PDF file to an email the night before.
Which highlights a really critical theme in all of this. Profound inclusion is rarely about complex logistics. It's almost always just about thoughtful foresight.
Foresight, yeah. Just thinking ahead about the person who isn't there. But let's look at the flow of this support, because so far we've really only discussed how the remote mourner receives the ritual, right?
Right, the one-way flow of information.
Yeah, they receive the video feed, they receive the PDF program. But the source material transitions into a strategy that completely flips this dynamic, which I found fascinating.
Yes, facilitating remote contributions to the in-person event. This is where things get really dynamic.
So we are moving from the remote person just being a consumer of the funeral to the remote person actually being a co-creator of the memorial.
Exactly. The guide outlines several highly effective methods to bring that absent voice directly into the physical room.
What kind of methods are we talking about here?
Well, this could be a pre-recorded video eulogy that gets played on a screen next to the altar, or it could be a written tribute from a distant friend that the officiant actually reads aloud during the service.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Or even just a collection of photographs submitted digitally by people all over the world, which then get woven into the memorial slideshow playing at the reception.
See, we generally operate under this assumption that a live stream or remote access is basically a favor we're doing for the absentee.
Right, out of obligation or pity.
Yeah. We set it up because we feel bad they can't make it.
Yeah.
But when we actively invite them to contribute a physical or audible element to the service, they cease being the object of our pity.
They become a crucial part of the ceremony.
They become a source of comfort for the people in the room. They become the comforter.
And that dynamic shift alters the entire emotional landscape of the chapel. Think about it. When the officiant unfolds a piece of paper and says, "I have a letter here from Sarah, who is watching us from London right now."
Oh, I've got chills just thinking about that.
Right. The localized, suffocating sorrow of that room is suddenly pierced by a much broader reality.
Because everyone is suddenly aware of the scale of the deceased's life.
Exactly. The people sitting in the front row, who might be just completely drowning in the immediacy of their personal loss, they are forced to look up and recognize the vastness of the deceased's impact.
It validates the grief of the entire room. Imagine being a grieving spouse. You're sitting there in the front pew, just feeling the crushing, unbearable weight of the absence.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
And then you hear a story read aloud from someone across the globe, detailing how your spouse changed their life like 20 years ago.
It proves that the life you were mourning had a ripple effect that totally defied geography.
Yes. The person who couldn't buy the plane ticket still manages to deliver a tangible, impactful blow to the sorrow in that room.
And importantly, it allows that remote individual to fulfill their social obligation to the community.
What do you mean by social obligation?
Well, historically in a village, everyone has a specific role when a death occurs. Someone brings the casserole, someone digs the grave, someone tells the stories.
Right, everyone pitches in.
But being distant strips you of your role. It leaves you feeling helpless and useless. By inviting their written words or their video message, the family is explicitly saying to them, "We still need you to carry your corner of this grief."
Your contribution is required for this ritual to be complete.
That is incredibly empowering.
It really is. It changes everything for the remote mourner.
But, every ritual eventually ends. The officiant gives the final blessing, the pallbearers step forward, the car doors slam shut, and the formal service concludes.
Yes, the bounded event is over. Which exposes a massive vulnerability in this whole digital strategy, doesn't it? A funeral is a bounded event. It lasts, what, maybe 90 minutes? 2 hours tops?
Usually, yes.
But human grief is notoriously asynchronous. It absolutely refuses to adhere to a schedule.
Oh, grief doesn't care about the clock at all.
It might hit you while you are washing dishes 3 weeks later. So if the live stream is the only tool we use, what happens to the connection when the camera is inevitably turned off?
Well, the text actually anticipates this exact cliff edge of support, and this naturally leads into the necessity of the digital memorial space.
Ah, okay. Transition from the live event to the ongoing tribute.
Right. We are looking at the transition from synchronous gathering to asynchronous tribute. The source material heavily advocates for the creation of dedicated memorial websites or really robust digital guest books.
Like a permanent URL for the person.
Yes. These are spaces where absolutely anyone, regardless of their time zone or physical location, can log on to deposit memories, upload archival photos from decades ago, and just write out the reflections on their own timeline.
Okay, consider the stark inadequacy of the physical alternative for a second, because this drives me crazy.
The traditional guest book.
Yes, at a traditional viewing or funeral, there is almost always a leather-bound guest book perched on this little wooden podium near the entrance.
With a little feathered pen.
Exactly. You walk in, your heart is pounding, you are completely overwhelmed by the scent of lilies and the sight of crying relatives.
So he was sensory overload.
It is. And you get in line. The person behind you is like shifting their weight impatiently. You have exactly 15 seconds to somehow summarize a 30-year relationship with a pen that might literally be running out of ink.
It's an incredibly high-pressure situation.
You just panic. You end up scribbling something generic like deepest sympathies or he will be missed. It's just this panicked performative act of signing the attendance sheet so people know you were there.
And let's talk about the lifespan of that physical book, too. It's incredibly short.
Yeah, what happens to it after the funeral?
After the reception, the family packs it into a cardboard box. It goes home, it gets looked at perhaps exactly once during that excruciating first week, and then it is permanently relegated to a bookshelf or shoved in a bedside drawer.
It becomes a static artifact of a single, highly stressful afternoon.
Exactly. But the digital memorial space, as detailed by the funeral program site, operates on an entirely different sociological premise. It is a living, breathing repository of memory.
Because it leverages the digital behaviors we have already deeply internalized, right?
Yes. We're already used to this medium.
Over the last 2 decades, we have learned to process our lives asynchronously through screens. We share photos on social media, we write long captions, we comment on each other's milestones.
It's second nature now.
Translating that ingrained behavior to a memorial website lowers the friction of sharing grief tremendously. You don't have to compose a masterpiece while holding up a line at a church.
No, you can take your time.
You can be sitting on your patio a month later, suddenly remember a hilarious story about the deceased, pull your phone out of your pocket and type it directly into the memorial site, right then and there.
And that asynchronous nature completely removes the paralyzing pressure of the immediate moment. It allows for a much, much higher quality of remembrance.
Because people actually have time to think.
Right. People share highly specific anecdotes, bizarrely beautiful memories, and deeply personal photographs that would never, ever have made it into the physical guest book.
Oh, I bet. You get the really good stuff.
And more importantly, it provides a wellspring of continuous comfort for the immediate family. Instead of a leather book locked in a drawer, they have a dynamic URL.
Wow.
6 months down the line, on a particularly difficult Tuesday when everyone else seems to have moved on, they can open that site and find a brand new story about their loved one that was posted just the night before by, say, an old college roommate.
That is incredible.
Right.
It proves that the act of remembering is collective and continuous.
Yes, the community hasn't moved on. They're just expressing their remembrance on a staggered timeline.
But having these digital spaces, having the live stream, having the shared PDFs, honestly, none of this matters if the logistical execution fails.
Oh, logistics will make or break the whole thing.
The source material is adamant about this. The best tools in the world are rendered entirely useless if people don't know where to find them, or if the communication surrounding them lacks, well, empathy.
The guide pivots really heavily here into the logistics of empathy. Intention is totally meaningless without meticulous execution.
So what does meticulous execution look like in this context?
The text emphasizes that organizers must communicate with extreme clarity, Links to the live stream, the password for the memorial site, the digital order of service, these cannot be sent out an hour before the funeral.
No, people will panic.
Exactly. They must be distributed well in advance, accompanied by explicit, jargon-free instructions. Like, assume the person reading it has never used a computer before.
And crucially, there must be day of reminders.
Right. Yes. Why are reminders so important here?
Because grief degrades our executive functioning. The immediate family is in a massive fog, obviously, but the remote mourners are often in a fog as well.
That's a great point. They are grieving too.
They forget time zone conversions. They lose emails in their spam folder. The source material insists on the redundancy of communication, but it also pushes for real-time interactivity where possible, which I think is fascinating.
Yes, interactivity is the next layer of connection.
If a platform allows for a moderated chat during the live stream, or if the family sets up a virtual waiting room before the service begins, it really mitigates the harshness of the digital divide.
We really have to analyze why that divide feels so harsh in the first place. The text states bluntly that grief can feel isolating, especially for those who are not physically present.
Let's unpack that. Why is it worse? Let's examine the sensory drop-off that occurs for the remote viewer.
Okay, walk me through it.
When you attend a funeral in person, the end of the service is naturally buffered by communal activity. You walk out to the parking lot together, you drive in a procession.
You gather at a reception hall or maybe the family home.
Right. You eat food prepared by neighbors, you drink terrible church coffee, you share the immediate physical aftermath of the emotional climax with other humans.
They decompress together.
But the remote mourner, they get none of that buffering. They watch the casket being carried down the aisle, they hear the final note of the organ, and then the screen simply goes black.
Oh, wow. That is bleak.
The sudden, absolute silence of their own living room must be physically jarring. They are jettisoned from this intense, shared emotional space back into the mundane reality of their house in an instant.
It is a brutal emotional whiplash, and this is exactly why the source material stresses post-service follow-up as an act of profound empathy.
The organizers have to step in.
The organizers, or maybe a designated friend of the family who isn't quite as overwhelmed, they must recognize that sudden isolation.
What do?
Sending a quick text message an hour later saying, "Hey, we felt your presence today," or making a 5-minute phone call that evening serves as a parachute for the remote mourner.
A parachute. I love that.
It softens the landing. It proves they were seen by the community, even when they were physically invisible.
Now, the absolute most empathetic logistical tool mentioned in the text, to my mind anyway, is the simple act of recording the live stream.
Oh, the recording is essential.
This brings us right back to the scenario we opened with. The person sitting in the dark at 3 a.m. We call this time zone grief.
Time zone grief. It's a very specific kind of pain.
When the geographic distance is severe enough, the synchronous event actually becomes an act of physical endurance. You are forcing yourself to stay awake when your body is screaming for sleep.
Mourning in the middle of the night, while your immediate physical surroundings are entirely asleep, is the absolute apex of isolation.
It's so unnatural.
The human brain is just not equipped to process profound communal loss in the dead of night without a physical community present. It's too much.
Which is why providing a recorded link changes the entire paradigm for that person. It offers them the grace of permission.
Permission to wait.
Exactly. It explicitly says, you do not have to endure this at 3 a.m. You can wake up, make your coffee, let the sun come up, and sit in your favorite chair.
You can face it in the light.
You can engage with this terrible reality when your body and mind are actually rested and ready to absorb it. The recording respects the specific, logistical, and emotional reality of the individual. You aren't forcing them to conform to the time zone of the chapel.
It is the ultimate expression of empathy translated into action. The text demonstrates that when you supply remote loved ones with the materials to mourn on their own timeline, you completely validate their specific circumstances.
They don't feel forgotten or left behind.
No, they don't feel forgotten. They feel accommodated, which is a huge distinction.
So if we look at the big picture, we have this incredible toolbox filled with very different instruments. We have the live synchronous video feed.
We have the physical shared materials like the PDFs.
We have the asynchronous memorial websites, the remote video contributions, the chat functions, and the delayed recordings. It's a lot. How does a family synthesize all of this without becoming totally overwhelmed by logistics?
The source material advocates for what they call a layered approach.
A layered approach, meaning use a little bit of everything.
Exactly. The layering is the crucial strategy. The text explicitly warns against relying on just a single method. You do not just stream the video and walk away thinking the job is done.
Because that only serves one type of need.
Right. You build a composite architecture of mourning. You pair the live stream with the digital guestbook. You send the PDF programs alongside the request for photo submissions. You create multiple entry points into the ritual.
Why is offering multiple entry points so vital to the process, though? Isn't one good option enough?
Because grief is not monolithic. A family is composed of individuals with vastly different psychological profiles, coping mechanisms, and comfort levels with technology.
Oh, right. Not everyone grieves the same way.
The layered approach guarantees that every single person has an avenue for participation that actually aligns with their specific needs.
It really is a masterclass in respecting individual grieving styles. Consider, like, an extroverted sibling who lives across the country.
Okay, the extrovert.
Their psychological need is immediate synchronous connection. They are going to want to watch the stream live, type out their memories in the real-time chat box, and jump into a virtual Zoom reception the very second the service ends.
Because that friction, that immediate engagement, is literally how they survive the day.
Exactly. But then consider a deeply introverted friend of the deceased. The idea of a live chat box might be viscerally repulsive to them.
Oh, they would hate it.
Their avenue is completely different. They might choose not to watch the live stream at all because it's too overwhelming. Instead, they download the digital program, read the selected poems quietly in their garden, and then, maybe 3 days later, they carefully upload a single beautiful photograph to the memorial website.
And neither approach is superior. Neither is more indicative of love or respect.
Right. By layering the tools, the family is not dictating the terms of mourning. They are simply building a robust infrastructure and allowing the network to use it as they see fit.
Which is such a generous way to host a memorial.
This entire exploration, honestly, forces us to reckon with the evolution of tradition itself. Because when we introduce webcams and URLs to the language of funerals, purists often recoil.
They absolutely do. There's a lot of pushback.
They argue that we are losing the ancient solemnity of the rite, that we are cheapening it with screens. But the text suggests these tools are not destroying tradition. They are allowing it to survive the complexities of modern life.
They preserve the core purpose, which is honoring a life and supporting the living by simply adapting the delivery mechanism.
Yes. If we pull back and look at the anthropological history of memorialization, we see a continuous, unbroken line of technological adaptation.
Oh, completely. Human beings have always leveraged the absolute most advanced tools of their specific era to confront the mystery of death.
And to secure the memory of the fallen. We are a species absolutely obsessed with leaving a mark.
We really are.
I mean, we began by piling heavy stones over graves to ensure the site wasn't lost to the elements. That was the cutting-edge technology of the time.
Precisely. And then we carved names into marble because it outlasted wood.
Right.
When the printing press was invented, we didn't reject it as a sterile machine. We immediately used it to print mass cards and distribute obituaries across entire nations.
Oh, that's a great point. And when photography became accessible,
We immediately began placing portraits of the deceased near the casket. A digital live stream, a recorded video eulogy, a centralized memorial server. These are not aberrations of tradition.
they are the next logical step.
They're the exact same human impulse, just manifesting through the circuitry of the 21st century.
The human need to witness, to remember, and to comfort has not shifted a single inch. The only variable that has changed is the velocity and the reach of our tools.
Exactly. We are not replacing the physical funeral. The chapel still matters. The incense still matters.
We are simply expanding the architecture of the chapel so that its walls literally stretch across oceans.
Yeah.
We are ensuring that anyone who belongs inside the ritual can actually find a door.
And it proves the ultimate premise of the text. Inclusion does not require proximity, nor does it require perfection. It requires only the intention to bridge the gap.
This brings us to the practical application for you, the person listening right now. Because look, it is highly unlikely that you're planning a funeral today.
Hopefully not.
But the reality of the human condition basically guarantees that eventually you will be adjacent to this kind of logistical and emotional crisis.
It's inevitable.
And when that moment arrives and you hear a family member lamenting that someone they desperately love simply cannot make the journey, you now possess a completely new framework.
You don't have to just throw your hands up.
Exactly. You do not have to accept that geographic distance as a tragic, insurmountable barrier. You can step in and reframe the exile. You know how to build the digital tethers.
You know how to send the PDF?
You know how to set up the static tripod and build the asynchronous site. You have the ability to pull the exiled mourner right back into the center of the village.
It is a profound capability to hold in reserve. And, as we conclude, it really leaves us with a necessary reevaluation of the past.
What do you mean?
Well, we tend to romanticize the history of the funeral. We imagine this entire idyllic village gathering tightly around the grave, perfectly unified in their sorrow.
The perfect pastoral goodbye.
But as we discussed, that historical gathering was brutally exclusive. It was restricted only to those with the geographic luck, the physical health, and the financial capital to be standing in that specific zip code on that specific afternoon.
Oh, man. Countless profound, life-altering relationships were entirely excluded from the final goodbye for thousands of years,
Wow.
simply because a horse couldn't run fast enough or a ship ticket cost too much.
The historical record of mourning is fundamentally a record of massive exclusion.
So consider this reality as you navigate the modern landscape of grief. Is it possible that by embracing these supposedly cold digital tools,
By clamping a smartphone to a tripod, by sending a URL across the globe,
by reading an email at an altar, are we not merely making do with modern, inferior alternatives?
is it possible that we're actively engineering a mourning process that is exponentially more democratic, far more inclusive, and historically more complete than anything our ancestors could have ever managed to build?
I think we are. We are finally giving everyone who loved the person a seat at the fire, regardless of where they are sitting in the dark. For centuries, we believed that if you couldn't breathe the same air, the door was permanently closed. But it turns out the connection was always there waiting for us. We just finally built the tools to see it.